also wanted to thank Ecotrust for having me and having us, and thank Dylan and his team for the extensive amount of work that they did in preparation for these sessions. It really did make my job very easy, and just get to come and sort of have a conversation and appreciate the introduction. I hope that my community celebrates my work, but sometimes doesn't always feel that way. So a tough gig at moments being on the policy side of these pieces, but it does give some different perspective of how we can actually implement and work forward through some of these big challenges. So my work within the Pembina Institute, though, is on that other side of working with a fantastic team of building out that evidence-based advocacy and policy pieces. Pembina is a clean energy think tank that has worked for the past 40 years of being a watchdog, an advocate, and a collaborator on all aspects of the clean energy industry. So both upstream, where we get our energy from and how we can decarbonize industry, and downstream, and how we're using our energy sources and how we can become more efficient and more effective. So that historic focus on decarbonization has evolved, and as sort of Dylan mentioned, we have that growing recognition of intersecting challenges and opportunities. Climate mitigation, climate adaptation and resilience, clean energy economic growth, the cost of living challenges, and health and well-being. So we try to find ways that we can focus on, connecting the efficiency first and the electrification build-out, but really, also keeping in mind that as we find these opportunities to multi-solve, there are risks of further exacerbating existing inequities, existing vulnerabilities, and potentially leaving those folks behind. So we have pulled together a group of speakers that work on decarbonizing our built environment from a number of different perspectives. And I did also want to thank Chris and Mariko for stepping in. You'll note that their bios have been added in as an addendum page on the speaker package, but only because they're our pinch hitters, not our folks what we forgot about. So thankful for you to be stepping in last minute and adding your perspectives. So for this session, what we've done is structured it where each speaker will have 5-ish minutes to speak about their work. As they're speaking, I do encourage you to use the Slido, put in your questions, comments, thoughts, and then we'll ideally get to those as soon as possible. We do have some prepared questions to start conversation, but I'd prefer to get to the room as soon as we can and get your ideas and questions asked. So I will sit down and let these folks jump right in.
Sure. Great. Can you hear me? No, not yet. Does it have to click off? No. Maybe now? There we go. Great. Thanks very much. So yeah, I liked Lisa had started with some context of why she was here. So maybe I'll start with the same. I've worked with the city since 2014. And in 2014, I had the opportunity to work with Yasmin from Cambo, who you'll see speak later. At the time, and I'll throw some shade at the city, that's where I work. So I'll throw some shade at the city because at the time in 2014, we would send out some English language information and then maybe hold an information session between 3 and 4 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. And that would be sort of the engagement. Hey, who did we, we reached everybody now. And so I had the opportunity to work with Cambo to do some in-community outreach and in language in 8 different languages. And we heard from people and got feedback that we'd never gotten before. And it was a wonderful program. We got the opportunity to run it for a number of years together. But I think that's at least a little part of, in addition to my being available on very short notice, why I'm here. Because at the city, I had the opportunity to try and reach communities that we had not historically reached. A lot of my work at the city has been in building code and making buildings better and decarbonizing, shifting off of gas and fossil fuel. And lots of times, I think big bureaucracies don't see inequity very well. And a lot of the time, and I'll just use my own experience, but a lot of time when I'd bring up an inequity, it would be either seen as not the priority to address or totally disconnected. Not as polite way, it was people would just be you're wrong. That's not an issue that we should look at or consider. And I think often if you're too early, people perceive you as wrong. So you're like too early in identifying an issue. I still run into that issue today when you see a problem that others don't yet see. So I think a big part of my job, although it's building related, is in trying to convince people that I'm right, convince people that I see a problem that they don't yet see. So that's like a big part, and I think inequity is one of those pieces that's harder for big bureaucracies to see. So whether it's the city of Vancouver or another entity, I think events like this provide the opportunity to have some visibility. So I was really happy I got to attend maybe 2 years ago when Dylan and the whole team hosted this event, and it was tremendous for me because it provided that additional visibility for the city of Vancouver. So that's a little bit of background to some of my work. Right now, a lot of my work is focused on electrification and making electrification lower cost on average, mostly focused in new construction, but some existing buildings where we're allowing people to add load, add cooling largely, without having to upgrade their service. So that's a little bit about me and a background, and look forward to participating in the panel. Thank you.
I'm Mariko Michasiw. I am the program manager for the Building to Electrification Coalition, which is a program within the Zero Emissions Innovation Center. So I'll tell you a little bit about B2E and why we think that equity and equitable decarbonization is important. So B2E is a BC-based coalition. We have over 200 members at organizations that are involved within this coalition, and together we're from like stakeholders from all across the building sector, everyone from the designers of the buildings, the people installing the equipment, to the policymakers. And so we all kind of gather together and we try to figure out, what is happening, what is in the way to be able to electrify more buildings today, and how do we find solutions to that? So we collectively, try and coordinate and listen to these different perspectives to find solutions together. And not to say that we have solutions for everything, but I think having those different perspectives really helps to develop stronger programs and policies overall. To me, I think building electrification is about providing equitable access to heating and cooling in a really efficient way. So we often talk a lot about heat pumps. I'm really all about how do we get more heat pumps into buildings. And in the vision of the future that we have, we want to see buildings that are more affordable, comfortable, energy efficient, and climate resilient. And we think that electrification plays a huge role in that. But to be able to do this right, I think we need to make sure that buildings are built right the first time. So I think the easiest time to decarbonize a building is when we're building it at the outset. You're also going to be able to have a really energy efficient envelope, which will ultimately result in lower bills for the tenants or occupants. So we really care about new construction, zero carbon step code, and the highest levels of the energy step code. And we also really care about existing buildings as well, but we understand that they are far more complex and challenging. And there are so many different facets to that. But we did hear about some changes this morning from Josephine about new programs coming from Clean BC and BC Hydro that are focusing on different building forms, which hopefully can support more decarbonization to happen in buildings. I think maybe I'll just wrap my piece there for now and pass it on to the next speaker.
Hello, so I'm Kayla Fayant. I am a Métis woman from Fishing Lake Métis Settlement, which is in Alberta, Treaty 6 territory. That's in my bio. I also work for Indigenous Clean Energy, where I'm a program manager on the Bringing It Home team. I'm also a regional energy coach. That's a new addition to my role. At Indigenous Clean Energy, or ICE, we really focus on helping Indigenous communities with energy sovereignty. We're really focused on capacity building And specifically, I'm on the Bringing It Home team, which focuses on energy efficiency in housing in Indigenous communities all across Canada. So my work and the work of my Bringing It Home team focuses on capacity development for the most part. So we have programs like our Project Accelerator, where it's a cohort-based program where we bring Indigenous communities together to really learn about everything that goes into a project like a retrofit project or a new build project, and all the things that go into that, including funding, including procurement, including all sorts of things of the financing. We also, so I managed our energy advisor training program, so a big part of getting Indigenous communities participating in bringing energy efficiency to their own community is ensuring that there's the experts available to them, and hopefully that's local experts that are also understanding the Indigenous reality on community. So we have been training we've been training in a regional basis energy advisors that can do energy-guided evaluations. But one of the projects that I specifically want to highlight today is our Healthy Energy Homes project. So this is a partnership that we have with Canadian Climate Institute, and the project takes the idea that housing is a social determinant of health another step, and considers how energy efficiency factors in. So poor quality homes or unhealthy homes lead to poor quality of life. We've talked about that today, we've seen that, but through like health and economic impacts. So we're defining unhealthy homes at ICE as housing that contributes to poor health outcomes. They might have poor air quality, they might have moisture, they might have mold, they could be overcrowded or unsuitable to family sizes. So the idea that Healthy Energy Homes supports the health and well-being of the occupants and the community. We're doing this by implementing energy efficient systems to improve the air quality, to prevent that moisture and therefore mold, and making sure that they're culturally relevant, that they're suitable to our family sizes. So these houses are energy efficient, they're durable, they're safe, they're healthy. So we're really taking the idea that Healthy Energy Homes is a solution for our communities, and we're looking to really position that as the solution. So the first stage of this project has been a scoping paper, which we released last June. It's exploring the links between health, energy efficiency, and housing, and was looking at Healthy Energy Homes as that solution. So the next phase, we're looking at the potential solutions, some barriers, and some other opportunities. And we're working on that currently, doing interviews, and we plan to come out with that paper in fall. Yeah.
All right, thank you. It's nice to hear from all of you, and a pleasure to be here in the room with everyone. Thanks to Jessica for moderating us too. My name is Robyn Ashwell, and my current project with Ecotrust Canada is researching the unique barriers and opportunities for supporting energy efficiency retrofits in manufactured homes. When I say manufactured homes, I'm talking about homes that were built in a factory on a steel frame and then transported to their home site and anchored there. These have formerly been called mobile homes or trailers, but they no longer have permanent axles. They are costly and difficult to relocate, so those terms no longer really apply. And all of the organizations connected to this type of housing are trying to move away from the stigma associated with those terms as well. In British Columbia, manufactured homes make up around 4% of housing. The majority of these homes, around 70%, are in rural areas and small towns. They make up 22% of housing on First Nation lands. And the majority of homes are in land lease communities, which are often called manufactured home parks. In this setting, usually residents own their home, but rent the land from a park owner. Manufactured homes are an important piece of the affordable housing puzzle in BC, partly because the land value is usually not connected. The value of the homes is lower and the rate of home ownership is higher than other types of housing. But manufactured homes are also associated with insecurity in several different ways. So first of all, these homes on average use 60% more energy per square foot than other types of housing. And that's one of the reasons why these households are far more likely to experience energy insecurity or energy poverty, as we've been talking about. Because they're difficult to relocate, the land lease model leads to vulnerability. For example, if conditions in a park deteriorate or if a park is going to be redeveloped, the residents can be left with few options. And park owners have a lot of control over what can be done to the homes in their park and control over the conditions in those communities. And thirdly, the nature of these structures, especially older manufactured homes, are prone to unhealthy and uncomfortable conditions. For all of these reasons, retrofits can make a huge difference in manufactured homes. And I would say that manufactured homes actually are a great illustration of how an equity focus can produce significant energy savings and also have a huge impact on people's lives, both through direct and indirect impacts of retrofit work. In recognition of this, BC's Energy Conservation Assistance Program, which is funded by the utilities, has developed a stream specifically for deeper retrofits in manufactured homes at no cost to the participants. This is a great initiative, and it needs to be expanded to include fuel switching and to reach even more homes. ECAP helps to address the biggest barrier for residents, which is to do with cost. But there are also a variety of other retrofit barriers that stem from this unique type of housing and the construction of these homes, from their setting in manufactured home parks, and from the attitudes and demographics of residents. Many of these barriers can most effectively be addressed at a community level. So for example, park owners need more information about their park's electrical capacity and about the effects of retrofits on electrical capacity so that they don't block retrofits unnecessarily. And park owners also need to hear about the benefits to them of supporting retrofits on their properties. For reaching residents, partnering with community organizations and reaching people in person in their parks can help to overcome low digital literacy and wariness among residents. And a bulk approach for rebate and retrofit programs makes a lot of sense, especially in a park setting with all this like type of housing in one place. A bulk program can help address challenges with contractor availability and contractor knowledge of these structures. And it can also help address the barrier to residents of being overwhelmed by what to do and who to work with. The opportunity here is to tackle all the sources of insecurity that I mentioned at once by building capacity and building resilience where it's badly needed.
Okay. Thank you all. I'm going to jump into a few questions, but please do use the QR codes on the back of your badges. They might also be found somewhere else in the room, but use those to add in some questions. And I'll start with one that we have set up. And you know, we've had some experience over the years on sort of poor execution of clean energy and innovation in sort of different equity deserving and equity seeking communities, I would say, and we haven't always done a great job of those aspects. At the same time, we're at this place where we speak about really needing to focus limited public dollars on those who need it most and those who can't access capital and financing in different ways. So I'm wondering if any of you, all of you, can answer, like, can we actually prioritize and engage equity-deserving households and use it and help them, but use it as a way to accelerate decarbonization in the building sector at a larger scale?
I love going first, so this is great. So I love the question. This is a great question. I think often we don't look at how previous programs have worked for underserved groups, and we redesign a program without necessarily getting feedback directly from those who are underserved. Like, why didn't it work? Did it not work because the offer wasn't compelling? Was the offer only delivered in English on the City of Vancouver's website? Like, there are reasons why programs don't work, and we often don't take the time to look and understand why. So to answer the question, I mean, I would say we certainly can develop programs to reach underserved groups, but we really need to look at the current offer and if it's delivering everything we need, and if not, why not? And talk to groups specifically in community and meeting them where they're at. I'll tell a very quick story. I held consultations for a long time at City Hall, and I felt like City Hall was like a pretty accessible place. It was relatively central. It was on a bus route. It was on a SkyTrain route. And then I got invited to come to speak to a group at a temple in South Vancouver. And I went out, and I was required to take off my shoes, and I had to wrap my head with a scarf. And I was a bit unsure of how this was all going to go. And I was a little bit nervous. And one of the fellows who I was going to consult with, when we were walking towards the room, he's like, "How do you feel right now?" And I was like, "I feel a little bit nervous." And he's like, "Yeah, that's how we feel when we go to City Hall." And it was like, it was a real learning moment for me. So now when we're trying to engage with the group that we want to reach and actually have them come out, we'll find out where they want to meet. And it's often further out from City Hall and without the sort of formality that comes with City Hall. So that was a real kind of learning point for me. And when we're talking about how we design programs, you want to meet the people that you're wanting to be in the program where they want to be met. So that's would be my comment. Maybe I'll turn it over to Mariko if you want to continue, or.
I think I can build on that comment about designing programs a little bit as well. Interestingly enough, like during our last workshop session, we had a conversation about program design and accessibility to those programs, and lowering the barriers to be able to access them would be great. An example that I can think of is, the income qualified program having to provide that data to even be able to access the program is a barrier. And if we're looking at, say, multi-unit residential buildings, can we not focus on things like below market rental buildings? Just making a large assumption that likely a large majority of the people who live there may qualify for the program, and not be so worried about people who are getting like benefit from the program that may not fall into that category, but largely we're benefiting the people who live in the building who need access to those programs. So I think, ways that we can be a little bit more innovative in reducing barriers would be very welcome.
Yeah, so Indigenous peoples are the fastest growing population in Canada. So by creating a more equitable system where they're able to participate in decarbonization, we're enabling decarbonization to happen faster. Many Indigenous communities are rural or remote, and they're paying 6 to 8 times more for electricity and heat. It's a huge need to push decarbonization and to enable communities to participate and be part of the conversation all across Canada.
I'll quickly chime in as well and say, especially in the context of a housing crisis, someone said to me in an interview during my research that if it has a good roof, someone's going to be living there. So unfortunately, the most affordable homes are often the least efficient. So I think, as I was kind of explaining, when we're talking about decarbonization, some of the lowest hanging fruit actually is correlated with equity deserving groups or neighborhoods, or however you want to define that, and that's worthy of our focus and of our attention. And I was also, I guess the provincial programs that Josephine and Dylan were mentioning earlier, focusing more now on income qualified approaches, I think, are starting to address that. And the energy savings program, paying contractors directly, takes away the kind of need to float the cost of retrofits, and that's a huge help. I had one more thought. Hold on just a moment. I guess the one other thing I wanted to mention is that, kind of based on my look at manufactured homes, I also think that, and it's come up a few times already this morning, some of the technical barriers, and this comes up in manufactured home parks, are related to electrical capacity, for example. And I think by looking closely and really focusing our attention on equitable decarbonization first, we will actually solve some problems and make decarbonization more streamlined and easier kind of across the board from there.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move to a question that's come in on Slido, and there's been a lot of comment on needing to understand the successes and failures of what we've tried so far, and before we try other methods or develop new programs. There's a question about what are the barriers to acting upon feedback from consultations? And do you have any ideas for lived experience information to be taken more seriously in the planning? So I guess it's like a further depth to, not only do we need to do some better measurement and verification on the programs themselves, but are we taking in the feedback effectively, and are there some risks associated with that? Anyone who'd like to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say, one barrier that I see at the municipal level is often time. So you often are allocated some money, and then you have to launch a program, and having the time and being early enough to both reach out to groups and not have it be extractive. So just as a quick example, if there's a group you're trying to reach that's been hard to reach historically, the worst is certainly doing nothing, but just one step above that is like an extractive process where you just reach out to them and say, hey, I've got some questions for you. I want to take up some of your time, and I want you to give me the answers, and then I'll go away, and you'll never see me again. And that's the second worst. Much better than that is building a relationship. But the barrier to building a relationship, I'd say, is, at least at the municipal level, we're not terribly well set up to build relationships with groups that we haven't historically had relationships with. So cities, I think, they're used to sending out critical information that if you don't act on it, there'll be dire consequences. So like, hey, pay your property tax or we'll take your home. Like the communications exercise there is easy. But what's harder is communicating to groups, hey, this is something we'd like to learn from you, and we'd like to change our programs based on that, and we'd like to develop a relationship with that community. The relationship takes time, effort, commitment from the city on spending some money to reach those groups, and then interest in developing an ongoing relationship and having that as part of that person's role or that role within the city. So I'd say there is the potential, and I'd say at least at the Vancouver scale, we're working, we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So I'm very optimistic, but the challenge I'd say is mostly around time and maybe a lack of experience having it be a two-way street and seeing that as value as opposed to just extractive and like, hey, you tell me something and then I'm going to make a change. I think it's very hard too because as a city staffer, like I'm paid to be there, and then the group that I'm speaking to is probably not paid to be there. And I'm come from a place where I have the luxury of time. I'm paid for a certain number of hours a day, whereas the other group may not and unlikely to have that kind of luxury of time. So I think there are ways to address it, but those are some of the challenges.
I just wanted to jump into on the programming side of things. I think one thing actually I want to celebrate Zeke for is the BC Retrofit Accelerator. I mean, we were the aggregators where all the funding came from, but brought in program delivery partners so that they have a much better, they have the relationships on the ground and they know what those communities need in order to be successful in their retrofit projects. So BC Nonprofit Housing Association, Aboriginal Housing Management Association, Landlord BC, Condominium Homeowners Association, they're all delivery partners who understand those building forms, ownership types a lot better. And they directly have relationships with the people who are going to be undertaking the retrofit.
Thank you.
So from a community perspective, I think programs really need to understand the unique needs and context of the communities that we're working in, especially for for like Indigenous groups. There needs to be more recognition for the impacts of a program or a project over the outcomes. So when you're going through a program, you're set with a time, you're set with your goals, and that's what you have to follow. But you're not measuring and looking at the impact of what that's having on a community. And I think we do that by co-developing policies and programs with communities and equity-deserving groups.
I just wanted to echo a couple of things that have been said. One, that to get good feedback, you actually have to find a way to make contact with the people you're trying to help. And that, I think, is a major limitation on some program design work. And then secondly, that there are people who already have connections with the people you're trying to reach. And if you can partner with those organizations, that can be a fast track on those relationships.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and good to see democracy in action on the Slido. Things are getting voted up to the top. The top question is around manufactured homes, so it's obviously going to be a little bit geared towards Robyn, but if others have thoughts on this, please do jump in. The question is, do we know what the cost difference between replacing versus retrofitting manufactured homes is? And would that influence the approach for that housing segment? And I think it's kind of fair in all housing segments and housing stock also. So if any folks have thoughts on that, like how do we really start to think of the cost of replacing versus retrofitting?
Yeah, sure. I'll chime in on that first. So in general, it does still cost less to retrofit an existing home than to bring in a new one, even in manufactured homes, even in older manufactured homes. I have heard of a few programs in the United States where homes that were built before there was any standard actually are being replaced with new homes. They're deciding not to work on them at all. But again, in the context of a housing crisis, there's not an excess of housing. The number of new manufactured homes being built each year is already not making enough of a dent, arguably, in the need for affordable housing. And so diverting those to replace homes that maybe could be made livable. Maybe we need to do both, I guess is what I'm saying.
Fair, thank you. If anyone else wants to, Mariko looks like she wants to say something.
And it's not necessarily around manufactured homes, but on replacing housing. I think there's areas where, there are a lot of low-rise developments that are aging, and maybe they are also located in transit hubs. And as much as it is awful to lose those houses in the short term, if you're developing larger buildings in their place that provide more housing options, I mean, there's certainly trade-offs everywhere, but like a transit-oriented development also, allows fewer single occupancy vehicles, more access to like services locally. So I think there are some cases where we have to make really hard decisions on like, do we let go of some housing today to have way more housing in the future? And then what do we do with those tenants who are currently living there?
Yeah. Thank you. The next question I would say is, again, more targeted to one of our speakers, Kayla, but if others have ideas, please jump in. Has the conversation of self-sufficient electricity in rural Indigenous communities been considered with feasibility studies and Indigenous consultation?
More time.
Oh no, I just deleted the question. Oh no. I went into the answered bucket and I don't know how to find the answered bucket. But yeah, with Indigenous and like energy sovereignty and electricity sovereignty, has there been a level of feasibility study and research done on what that is?
Yeah, I think that's really location context. I think every province has a different level of readiness for Indigenous communities to be able to develop a energy generation project. That's same with consultation. That's a really, I think, a provincial level. As far as consultation, there is a group, an Indigenous council, that consults with at least the federal government on Indigenous participation in clean energy.
Thank you.
Add a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
I was fortunate last week to attend a conference just on electricity, which was all about electricity, and the opening panel was Indigenous involvement in electrical generation. They were talking about all the involvement both in BC, Alberta, and other provinces. One thing, if you're ever curious and interested, you can look at how connected reserve lands are to the electrical grid. The answer often is that they're not as connected as would be beneficial. Electrical grids work well when they are a grid. So there are generators and consumers connected in a larger grid. So islanding or further islanding First Nations communities, I would say, wouldn't be to the benefit in terms of lowering electrical usage. So there's a lot of focus and a lot of talk about how to better connect First Nations communities to the broader grid and how to involve First Nations more often in electrical generation. And I asked specifically for feedback how they thought BC Hydro was doing, because in their most recent call and the current call, there's a requirement for First Nations to be involved. And they sort of gave it maybe like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10, so like a really good first effort. There are opportunities to improve, and I'm certainly optimistic, and the speakers were optimistic in BC about further involvement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question speaks to sort of costs and affordability. I think we've talked a little bit about this already today in different conversations, and it's an ongoing theme, definitely in the sort of housing and built environment sector, is just the rising costs of retrofits and the rising costs of construction are making it more and more challenging to multi-solve and to meet the needs of housing supply and climate resilient existing housing while addressing all of these other needs that are there. The question is, given the increased costs of decarbonization, do panelists have suggestions on how to decarbonize in a way that centers affordability? Easy question.
Anybody else want to start? I can start. So a lot of my work right now centers on lowering the average cost of electrical servicing for new buildings and a little bit for existing. So how to center the sort of shift towards electrification on affordability, maybe a couple of points. One, when I say electrification, just mean adding a new electrical load. So for a lot of people, it's cooling. Cooling's obviously a big driver. Sometimes it's an electric vehicle, and there are some other loads as well. But that's sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about electrification. At the municipal level, there's a real opportunity to remove municipal requirements. Again, picking on Vancouver. Vancouver had a lot of requirements around electrification and electrical servicing for buildings 3 dwellings and greater. So, well, why 3 dwellings and greater? Well, we could theorize about why. I think at least at some level it was a beautification requirement that the thought was, well, 1 and 2 family homes are kind of pretty nice on their own, but for triplexes and above, we have to take some extra steps to make them a little nicer. Vancouver's removed those requirements, and now other municipalities like Burnaby have removed the requirements as well, and other municipalities are considering them. So I think there's an opportunity for municipalities to step up. If you work or you live in a municipality and are interested in trying to make some of those changes, Hydro is doing a bit of a dog and pony show. I'm one of the dogs, and we would travel around and sort of talk to the municipalities about some of the changes you can make to try and lower the average service connection. So that's really entirely focused on removing some municipal regulation. That a lot of municipalities, I think there's 86 municipalities in BC that have regulations that increases the electrical servicing cost. So there's an opportunity there to lower that. So it's the first piece, and then the second piece of 2 is for existing homes. I think there's a tremendous opportunity, existing homes, existing buildings, there's a tremendous opportunity to look at load management. Next month, we're doing a joint press release with BC Hydro around the City of Vancouver and BC Hydro around a 6-plex that we just electrified. Everyone added cooling, most people added electric hot water, and they were able to do it within the existing service size, so they didn't have to upgrade the electrical service. And we're using a load management piece of hardware from Burnaby, BC, all the way from Burnaby, able to support another kind of Canadian startup. So I think there's a couple of things. Ontario next month will allow that load management technology broadly, and I think BC has an opportunity to do that as well. So from the regulatory perspective, there's lots of opportunity to lower the average cost and really center electrification around affordability.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. I'm very intrigued by load sharing and the possibility of electrification without service upgrades. That means actually doing less work, so more capacity. I also just want to reiterate what I mentioned about a bulk approach, especially in communities like manufactured home parks with like housing. I think taking some of the administrative burden off of contractors and freeing up that capacity to actually do more retrofit or construction work, either way, could help address this issue as well. And thirdly, I just wanted to mention, maybe there are some creative solutions out there. One that just came up recently for me is the idea of using Youth Climate Corps workers whose wages are already subsidized to actually assist with certain aspects of retrofit work. And that could be especially effective in a bulk setting where they could be supervised by a contractor and help take care of certain aspects of retrofit work on multiple homes.
Thank you. Same. If you don't have to have thoughts, if you don't have any. All right, then the next question is relatively pointed at Chris, but I'm going to make it a little bit broader also. And I think it speaks mostly really to collaboration, and that we have programs like you've discussed that are municipal or local government level. We know that there's programs in place that are provincial partnership with federal funds, and utilities are involved. And so I think that alignment and collaboration is really key. But the question specifically is some of the access barriers that you've learned about, and potentially others, and the programs that you work on. have you actually communicated those to BC Hydro so that there can be better integration of solutions?
A great question. I guess the answer is, unfortunately, I have. So I'm like the bearer of bad news. I get to tell people what's not working and like what needs to change and why the great idea that they have needs some modification. So have I communicated it to Hydro? Yes. I'm fortunate I get to work at Hydro every week physically in their offices, and as a result I have a pretty direct conduit both to build a relationship, so back to the earlier point, you know, I'm not just delivering bad news all the time because people wouldn't want to listen to me if that's what I was doing. So I get to build a relationship with people at Hydro and then suggest, hey, you know, this program you developed is really excellent and it's the best one we've seen in British Columbia, but here are some challenges that we have at the municipal level. Could we maybe work together to try and improve the next version of the program? If you, one more point and then I'll close, hand it to someone else. If you feel there's a program that Hydro has that you'd like to see an improvement, now is an incredible time to give feedback, and feel free to give it to me or to Hydro directly, because Hydro's getting a new CEO, and she's coming on later this summer, and she's incredible, and there'll be, I think, a real opportunity to evaluate what's been done and opportunities to improve. So I'll leave it there for the answer to the question, and maybe turn it over to my fellow panelists.
Yeah, no, like if any of the other panelists have experience, whether it's your own sort of frustrations in trying to communicate with those you need to collaborate more with, or those efforts of advocacy, if you have those experiences of trying to build bridges with the folks that need to all come together around the table for these very challenging projects, I'll give you a second to think about it.
I'll just say, I think within the B2E network, because it's like over 200 organizations, we have actually been able to build a lot of trust with the utility providers, with the province. So they'll often come to us and ask for help in like their stakeholder engagement processes. And we actually, in all of our committee meetings, we have representatives from Hydro, from the province at every single one of those. So to some degree, they're hearing the concerns. And the one role that we don't play is like advocate. So we can't directly advocate to them to change things, but we do ask a lot of questions. So we're hoping those are taken into consideration.
Thank you. Okay. I think the next question is building on the discussions and questions we've had, and it's, what do you do when electrification goals come at the cost of justice or equity? And so I think we've talked a bit about that tension between cost and affordability. There's an example that's put in of the high cost of electric baseboard heat in buildings with poor or no insulation. So I guess maybe specifically, you know, if we move towards electrifying as the goal, you know, what are we leaving behind, and how might we go about improving overall conditions that that do address some of these other pieces of affordability, comfort, health, and equity?
Yeah. So
Anybody?
yeah. So I would say Yeah, it's always risky to say this, but I'll say it anyway. Like electrification shouldn't be the goal, in that like we shouldn't be trying to optimize a single thing. It's not good if you like Google single value optimization. Like you can see all these examples where you try to optimize for one thing, and so in incentive programs, you know, you can be encouraging electrification, and that can be a goal, but especially if you're trying to work with be an income qualified program, I would say electrification shouldn't be the only goal. It would be a huge failure in the long term if you electrified homes and then people get the bills and go, wow, this was a mistake, and then they would tell other people this was a total mistake, and you've not only done a disservice to those individuals, but you've set back the kind of movement broadly. So if you're developing an income qualified program, I mean, the overarching goal that I would use would be to lower the monthly cost. And so in some cases that might be retaining gas and having a dual fuel system. But in other cases it may be that there is a path for electrification. But it's not that every project has to have full electrification as the end goal. Sometimes you need to balance other objectives, and I'd say a well-designed program balances objectives and delivers homes that are cost-effective to operate, as well as reducing greenhouse gases, and in many cases encouraging electrification, but not in all cases.
Yeah, I guess just to build off that. Every single building that exists today, every building's a snowflake. So there are different components that enable you to decarbonize. So a building that may need new windows, we don't want to just put heat pumps in, because if it's very leaky, it's going to be much more expensive to operate than the existing gas system. So we really do need to look at the buildings as a system, and not just, blanket statement, put one solution down for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe not specifically for electrification, but for retrofitting, I think it's important to have dedicated affordability and dedicated Indigenous streams, so we have more participation from the equity deserving groups in programs.
I just want to add that in many cases, certainly in manufactured homes, electrification is very often correlated with bill savings, and so actually contributing to affordability and not compromising other things. I also want to say that, especially in manufactured homes, but maybe it applies across the board, it is ideal to be tackling many aspects of decarbonization at once. Ideally, you are, improving air leakage and insulation, and then sizing a heat pump that's going to use less electricity because you've taken those other measures.
Great, thank you. So we've reaching the end of our time for this discussion. I think this opening session this morning did a really great job of setting the current context that we're living in and working in, and trying to address these challenges in. And at moments, it's unfortunately rather scary at this time. But what I'd like is for each of you to take a minute or less to give us what you're most hopeful about. We can start at the opposite end, since Chris seems to always start. Yeah.
I appreciate you starting on the other questions, Chris. Thanks. One thing that I am hopeful about is just the opportunity to address many issues at once, and especially looking at manufactured home parks. I think we can, through the lens of retrofits and of equitable decarbonization, actually improve people's lives far beyond just the envelope of their home.
So our team has a vision of all Indigenous people across Canada having these healthy energy homes that I spoke about. I am very hopeful in seeing the work that we've been doing with our other programs, like our Project Accelerator, and seeing the work that's already happening. And I have high hopes for the next phase of our Healthy Energy Homes project, and that we're going to see policy changes, we're going to see reduced barriers, we're going to see reduced silos, and there's going to just be more capacity building, so there's more ownership and more energy sovereignty for Indigenous communities across Canada.
We are at time, and I just would like to ask you in joining me in thanking our panel for all of their great contributions.